Well, good morning and welcome to Matchday Live as the Imps host Wimbledon. And you'll notice somewhat different surroundings this morning as well. Of course, it's the final League One game of this season. So myself and Gary Hutchinson thought we'd bring you today's show live here from the LNER Stadium. Of course, with it being the final game of the season as well. Today's topic is quite simply, what is your favourite moment of this fantastic League One season so far? Leave your comments in regarding that and I'll do my best to read them out throughout the show. I'll be asking Gary for his final three best moments of the season so far very shortly. In the meantime, Gary, lovely to see you. A big day in terms of the playoffs as a whole. For the Imps, an opportunity to finish third or fourth. How important is it to finish with a good result?
I think it's important to finish with a good result, mainly for momentum. I think it's more important to finish with a good performance, regardless of the result. I think we've turned in some great performances so far. I think in terms of home or away leg, I don't think it really matters, particularly with not having fans in the stadium. We've actually been better away. My feeling is that if you can go into the first leg, get a good advantage, for instance, in an away game, then probably benefit from home. But I think just a good performance is what Michael will be looking for. Yeah,
Michael made a few changes, didn't he, to that game at the Valley on Tuesday night. What sort of team are you expecting this afternoon?
Much stronger one for a start. I think he will be using this as a dress rehearsal. I think it'll be as close to his first team as possible. I think those who like to predict lineups will get a good indication of who's going to play in the playoffs. So almost certainly starts for Joe Walsh, Liam Bridcut, George Grant, Tom Hopper. I think they'll all be in. And I think we'll be looking at relatively full strength, depending on injuries.
Yeah, a number of those players you just mentioned there, Gary, weren't involved against Charlton at the Valley on Tuesday night. If we have a look back at that game, what did you make of it overall?
It was a tough watch because it certainly felt like a training game in the first half. I think there was one or two players looking to get minutes in their legs who haven't played recently. Charlton didn't really play with any intensity, which didn't help. I think we went there looking for them to come out and really attack us. Then in the second half, they changed it up a little bit. And I think as soon as they got their noses in front, they were always going to go on and win the game. I was impressed with how we reacted, though, once we made the substitutions.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, Gary, if we just look at one of the chances here for Callum Morton that he nearly managed to squeeze into the back of the net. If we are being honest, it's far better to come out of a game like that in terms of no injuries, in that sort of phase, as opposed to going for throttle, picking up a few injuries, and before you know it, you're still in the playoffs anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I think we made the point last week as well that had we needed to take it to the final game of the season, it would have put a lot of pressure on players, and then ultimately could have ended up in the playoffs anyway. So it was nice to get minutes into the likes of Joe Walsh and Tom Hopper, almost certainly. I think it was obviously nice to give Liam Bridcut a little bit of a rest. People are saying, well, he can't be injured already. He wasn't. It was just a matter of planning his next 90 minutes, and I think he'll get that today as well. So look, it's always disappointing when Lincoln City lose a football game. It always stings. I didn't enjoy watching it at all, but at the same time, there were more positives, I think, than negatives to come out of it.
As for Charlton, they've kept their playoff ambitions alive. What did you make of them overall? And they will need to win this afternoon, but should they do so, how much of a threat could they be in the playoffs?
Certainly could be. They've got obviously Chuck Zaneke and Jaden Stockley, who are old school centre forwards. I think they've got decent players through the squad. I think they'll be a lot stronger next season. My gut feeling is in League One. I don't think that they'll do it. I don't think they'll be in the playoffs. But they'll be a real title contender under Nigel Adkins next season. But they will need to be better than they were in the first half against us. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've just seen Harry Anderson's goal there. We'll talk about him very shortly. And overall, there's a chance for Tom Hopper as well there. In terms of the overall performance, I guess Michael will be saying to the boys, look, at the end of the day, we don't need to focus on that now. It's all about the playoffs. And many times this season, we've seen our lads bounce back from results, countless occasions. You would like to think they'll do so again.
100%. Yeah, that'll already be gone. They will have parked that the morning afterwards at training. The game was what it was. I think we all knew that it was going to be not a training exercise, but a little bit probably less intense than it needed to be against Peterborough. Look, we parked the penalty decision against Peterborough very, very quickly. We'll do the same. We'll go out today, put a decent performance in, but all that focus will be on the playoffs.
Let's hope so. Let's talk about Harry Anderson then, because we saw him get on the score sheet there. We'll see pictures of the goal once again. It's a season, isn't it, which has seen him reach 200 appearances. I guess it's hard to think a club could have a legend really at 24 years old, but he certainly is one.
Well, he's the most decorated Lincoln City player, I think, in history, isn't he? I mean, he's had more playoffs playoff appearances now and trophies than any other player during Lincoln's history. So yes, he is a legend at 24. I think when any player gets to 200 appearances, when they get to 20, 30 odd goals, they have to be described in that manner. I really like Harry. I really like his attitude. He's been written off time and again when we came out of League Two. Is he good enough for League One? When Danny Cowley left, is he good enough for a Michael Appleton team? Time and again, he's proved it. He's been unlucky this season, I think, when he picked up his injury, and there was the small matter, I think, of him potentially having being affected by the COVID layoff as well. I think his form dipped a little bit. It's really pleasing to see him coming back into form.
Yeah, played well against Peterborough, didn't he? We obviously see him scoring at the Valley there as well. How important could he be in the playoffs, you think?
Massively important, because he offers something a little different to the other wingers that we have. We've got wingers that are very tricky, that like to get on the ball, that like to beat players with skill, etc. Harry is a little bit different. He's very bullish. He can barge players out of the way or fight for balls. He's got a great upper body strength as well. He's very much really like a traditional wing back, but he likes playing further forward. I don't think he'll be in the first team picture in terms of the first 11, but I think if you want somebody to come on in the last 20 minutes and shake a game up, grab it by the scruff of the neck, Harry Anderson can really do that.
Let's talk moments of the season then. There is still so much that could happen in this League One season, isn't there? But we do have to look back, of course, with it being the final League One game, especially being here at the LNER Stadium as well. I've asked Gary for his top 3 moments. I can see your comments coming in regarding moments of the season as well, so I'll get to those shortly as well. Gary, let's start with your first. You've gone for Blackpool away.
Yes, I have. Yeah, it was early in the season, obviously, and I think there was an element of still feeling that we were getting a little bit of luck, I think, now and again. But going to Blackpool away, who, as I keep going on about, I kind of tipped for promotion. For me, that was a big statement, not just in the result. Winning 3-2 at Bloomfield Road was a huge result, but in the manner in which we won it. We came back from 2-1 down really late on. We put that disappointment behind us, and it really showed, I think, the attributes and the application and the attitude that this squad had, and that typified it early doors.
Yeah, it felt like the momentum of the season really sort of, if it hadn't already, it kick-started after that game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was obviously Lewis Monsmore was scoring goals late on. I think Sean Rowan played that game. Michael changed things up at half time because CJ Hamilton was giving Rowan a tough time. For me, it just demonstrated what was to come, a flexibility within the playing squad, the right attitude, refuse to lose, which a former manager always used to say. And to get a last minute winner is always phenomenal. I terrified the dog on the sofa that afternoon.
Well, I was going to say, could you, I mean, that's quite a thought in itself, but could you imagine that the scenes in the away end when that winner went in?
It would have been phenomenal, because people would have been there Friday night as well, so there would have been a really great atmosphere around the town. So it's sort of a little bit tinged by sadness, isn't it? Because it's a phenomenal moment, but we all watched it on our sofas.
Tell us your second out of your 3 then that you've picked, and why.
So I've picked Portsmouth away for my second choice. Again, I think it was quite a historic moment. I felt that we were going there really as underdogs. I thought we started phenomenally well, and then obviously they had their boy sent off. Again, we had to show adaptability. We had to change things up to become the dominant team. We were expecting them to have possession and us soak it up, and it was just a wonderful moment. And I think as the game pressed on, we looked like we might go on and win 2 or 3-0. And in my lifetime, Lincoln City winning 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, whatever it looked like it ended up. I know it was 1-0. Was unheard of at Fratton Park, and it was just a moment where I really felt we are in this. We are in a championship promotion battle here. We are contenders. It was just a wonderful moment, it really was.
And what a moment for Morgan Rogers as well, because we talk about kick-starting the season, looking back at Blackpool, it did feel, didn't it, like in that game that kick-started his individual season, and since then his form has been quite sensational.
Yeah, it did. I think he played against Peterborough, didn't he, when we drew, and people were saying, well, what's he going to bring to the team? And I think that showed it. He scored some wonderful goals, certainly a first-team player, lots and lots of quality, and again, what a stage to do it on. And if he is a player that likes that bigger stage, that bodes really well for the second for the playoffs rather.
Your third and final moment, will this one come as a slight surprise to Lincoln City fans? If it will, tell us why.
Potentially, yeah. I've gone for the 3-3 draw against Peterborough, which I know lots of people were incredibly disappointed about. And look, we're showing the Anthony Scully goal. There I go. We're showing the Anthony Scully goal, which was a wonderful moment. But that's not why I've picked it. I've picked it because this was the game in which we sealed a playoff place. That was utterly unthinkable at the beginning of the season. People say you can't write scripts. Well, nobody could have written that Lincoln City would be in the playoffs. Even Michael Appleton said ahead of the season we might surprise a few people. They surprised everybody. We went to Peterborough. We played them off the park park for 65 minutes. Had that been a game in the middle of the season where we hadn't started making changes and they had to win for promotion, I actually think we go on and win that game 4 or 5-0 rather than draw 3-3.
And by the way, end of the season awards, I should say, coming up this Friday. Goal of the season will be up for grabs. How close does that get?
It's going to be in the top 10, and that's a brilliant goal. But there's been that many phenomenal goals. I mean, you look at some of Morgan Rogers' goals. There was a Brennan Johnson goal, I think, against MK Dons. Wonderful team move. James Jones has hit a couple as well. The goal of the season, I wouldn't want to pick it this season. Yeah,
it's a frightening category, isn't it? Let's get to some of your comments then. I might just have to squint for this because the monitor that I'm looking at is somewhat far away from me, so do apologise for that. Ben Ward, if I can read this correctly, says, moment of the season in terms of footballing, he asks. Probably Pompey away, other moments, probably Teo scoring against Liverpool. Yeah, Gary certainly enjoyed that one. Fantastic moment for him and the club. Let's see. I think Scott Conroy there says, mine, Blackpool, Fleetwood, Peterborough and Charlton away matches. Yeah, he's picked a few there. Scott, moment of this season for me, Gillingham away was a complete performance. Great stuff. Indeed. Right, delighted to say that one of our other regular pundits joins us now. BBC Radio Lincolnshire summariser and, of course, former Imp Mark Hone is with us. Mark, I'll ask you for your moment shortly. Lovely to see you as always. First of all,
morning, guys.
It's a big game today in one sense, isn't it? But it's also a real chance to reflect and look back on what's been a quite fantastic season so far.
It has, yeah. Obviously, I've just heard what you've said, and just to get into the playoffs at the start of the season, we're Imps fans probably dreaming of that, and to come so close to automatics as well. I think it's been a fantastic season. Yes, they've had a blip, but I think there's circumstances as to why they've had the blip. They're young players. Some of them are playing the games. The intensity of the games, and that they've never played before. So I think everybody deserves such great credit for the position they find themselves in today. I mean, it's going to be a strange game because obviously there's huge games coming up back in the next week. So it's going to be a little bit strange. I'm not sure how the game will go today, if I'm brutally honest.
That's all right. That's what we're here to discuss it for. In terms of moments of the season then, Mark, we've obviously just been through Gary's 3 there. Which one for you, when you look back on it so far, would you go for?
I think I'm coming from a slightly different perspective in the fact that I've been able to get to the games. I've actually seen a few games. So, as much as you can follow it and I follow, it's actually being in the stadium and watching the bigger picture that I found really interesting about Lincoln's season. I've only watched probably 7 or 8 games, shall I say, that I've summarised on. So I think for me, the 2 games, there's one game in particular, the Burton at home. Now, for 10 minutes, Burton could not lay a glove on Lincoln. I mean, this goal is absolutely fantastic. That is not a John Beck pass it into an area corridor. That's movement from Scully. That's a fantastic goal. The pass, the movement from everybody, that was immense to watch. And in iFollow, you couldn't quite pick out what had gone on. If you watch it here, you can't see what Scully's doing. You can't see what he's doing. Then you just literally see it, and he sucked Daniels in the left back, and off he goes. And that's why Daniels was 10 yards behind him. So it's seeing that bigger picture. And for 10 minutes, literally Burton, in the same league as Lincoln, could not live with them. They didn't lay a glove on them. And I thought it was a fantastic 10 minutes of a Lincoln City performance that you just kind of go, wow, we're looking at something special here. That these lads are really something special. And the second game for me that I watched was Northampton away, a completely different game. Northampton were in Lincoln's faces. They were aggressive. They were long ball. Lincoln had to deal with that, and I thought they dealt with it brilliantly. And that's for me the 2 contrasts of Lincoln City this season. The one where if you sit off them, they'll go and destroy you. If you half-heartedly try and press them, they'll destroy you. But if you're in their faces and you want to go toe-to-toe with them, I think they've got that in their locker as well. And I think them 2 performances for me, after the Northampton, the Burton games, I'm thinking, wow, that this team has got something. It can win a game no matter what opposition you put in front of them. And for me, that is a promotion-winning squad.
Really good point, Gary, that Mark makes there with regards to two different types of footballing sides. I guess that's testament to Michael and his coaching staff, isn't it? That you have layers to a team. How important is that, as Mark says?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think it leans a little bit into that adaptability that I spoke about as well, because not only do we have those kind of different gears and different approaches, but we can switch very easily mid-game. And again, the Portsmouth game is, I think, a classic example of that, where we were expecting to sit off and have them coming at us, not in our faces as much as Northampton, but playing the bulk of the football, holding on to it, possession, Crewe, MK Dons, etc. Then when Watmore was sent off, then they retreated into their shells, and we had to then do what we did against Burton, as Mark pointed out, that we had to play the ball around, we had to find the opening, we had to control the tempo of the game, and we changed it like that. And so to have those different layers, I think that shows two things. One, clever players. It shows players who take information on board and are able to adapt and change mid-game, but it also shows brilliant coaching, because it means that they're working on 2 or 3 different game plans through the course of the week. And bear in mind, you're playing Saturday, Tuesday, so they may be getting Wednesday off, potentially Sunday off as well. Very little time on the training ground to get that into the players. So I think the fact that we are here now talking about a playoff place is testament to both the coaching staff and the players.
And talking of those playoffs, Mark, at this stage of the season, knowing what we know, that the Imps have already qualified for it, how much of an audition is this for some of the players that will be starting here at the LNER this afternoon?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting team selection. I don't know how Michael will play this. He could play it well. It's another free game, if you like, so I can get squad players minutes. Or he wants probably his first 11 that he's going to put out in the playoff game. So I don't know which way he'll go with this. It depends on the injury situation. It depends on the fatigue. It depends on his coaching staff and how much they've taken out of the players over the recent weeks and months. So it just depends who needs a rest, who needs minutes, but he will have one eye. There's no doubt about it. He'll have one eye on the first game of the playoffs, and he'll know within reason, because obviously we don't know who we're playing. So tactically that might change, but he'll know roughly what his starting 11 will kind of be at. So, it'll be an interesting team selection. And like I say, for me, it depends which team turns up today and wants to win the game, put it bluntly. As a professional, you want to win every game. Of course you do. And I'm sure Michael will be saying that. But it's about intensity levels. It's about, energy levels and all of them things that you need to win a game. It depends who's got the most of that today. That probably wins the football match for me, because Wimbledon have got nothing to play for, so they can go and enjoy themselves and probably relax slightly, which makes them a little bit dangerous. But Lincoln have probably got one eye on, 10 days' time, a week, 10 days' time. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting team selection again today.
Certainly is. Great stuff, Mark. Do stay with us because we'll be hearing a bit more from Mark Owen throughout the first part of this show. In the meantime, just a few housekeeping things to tell you about. It's the end of season awards that I mentioned before. It's coming up this Friday. I'll be bringing that to you live Friday at 7 o'clock. Some of the awards that will be up for grabs: Young Player of the Season, Players Player of the Season, the aforementioned Goal of the Season, Fans Player of the Season, a Lifetime Achievement Award as well, the Academy Player of the Season, Lincoln City Women's Player of the Season as well, and your Golden Boot winner as well. All the details of that are on weareimps.com now. I should say as well, congratulations to the club for being named the 6th best in the country in terms of fan engagement. That is across all of the divisions. So huge well done to everyone at Lincoln City for I say bringing home for that award, but for being named so highly in that, because it is quite an accolade indeed. And Gary, I'll just put that one to you as well. I mean, we are part of the club in one sense in terms of doing this show, but all the credit goes to the club for everything they're doing with regards to fan engagement.
Yeah, 100%. I think we were 6th last year as well, so we've shown a degree of consistency, which I think is impressive given the pandemic and given how much harder they've had to work to engage with fans. Things have had to be done remotely. On the supporters board, those meetings have carried on remotely. We've always had people from the club on the board. For instance, Jay Wright has been in our meetings. And I think the club just worked really hard to try and include everybody. And it's great to be recognised nationally, but I think that the real proof is in how fans react to the club. And I see very little negativity, even from some people who probably are negative on regular occasions. I see very little of that now, the season ticket announcement being a classic example. So well done to everybody at the club.
Absolutely. Well said, Gary. Right, let's get the pre-match thoughts of Michael Appleton. Then he was asked in his pre-match press conference about the injury situation and whether Brennan Johnson and Adam Jackson will feature this afternoon. This is what he had to say.
Yes.
Both.
At
must be a
point,
relief.
Yeah. At some point, both will definitely play a part in the game. Yeah. There's more chance that Brennan will play obviously more minutes than what Jacko will, because he'll only go into the game with 1.5 sort of sessions under his belt. So yeah, Jacko will play a small part, Brennan. Unless obviously there's any issues, we'll play more of an extended part.
And that must be delightful to have nobody missing for a first time in a very, very long time.
Well, that's not quite the case. We've got 1 or 2 that could be out, and we'll have a bit of a fitness test, whether it be today or tomorrow morning. TJ, he almost got a little bit of a issue with his knee, with a fat pad at the back of his knee. Don't see it being a big issue, but it might be a risk playing him tomorrow. So we just have to be sort of mindful of that. Apart from that, yeah, we're okay. Scully is another one who we're sort of monitoring. Obviously, he came off with a glute issue the other day. Again, it's something that's not going to sort of keep him out of the playoffs, but it's just whether it's a risk to involve him tomorrow or not.
Never easy being a football manager, is it, Gary? I mean, and Michael was talking about a few players there that could potentially be doubts for this afternoon. You'd at least like to think that should they miss out this afternoon, they will be back in time for the playoffs. Fingers crossed, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no point in risking anybody at the moment. I think you made that point about TJ Ioma. If he's fit, he will play. If there's a minor risk to him, I think he would be too precious in the playoffs. The same goes for Anthony Scully as well. So I think he's in a position where he's actually probably got a fuller, a more complete squad than he has at any other point of the season. But we are at a stage where there was no point in taking those risks. There really isn't today. If it was the same situation in 10 days' time, then he'd probably be more likely to risk somebody like TJ Ioma. But at the moment, absolutely not.
Mark, if I just bring you back into the conversation as well, every team has struggled with injuries this season, with the amount of games that they've had to play, with the COVID-19 situation as well. From a Lincoln City perspective, how do you think the club, how do you think the staff have dealt with those injuries?
I think they've done really well. I think there's no doubt the injuries and a little bit of loss of form affected them, and that's why they went on that bad run. I think it just felt a little bit flat, didn't it, in that period where I think there was a few injuries and people weren't quite maybe playing with injuries as well, which is never a great scenario for a football manager or a football player. So I just think they've handled it really well. You know, a lot of credit needs to go to the backroom staff. You know, in terms of just making sure that players are protected. You know, protect the players that need protecting. Like Michael's just said there, if TJ's got a slight niggle and it's a risk, don't play him. Just do not play him. You know, give him a couple of days off. Give him a chance with the physio, the rehab people to get himself back to full fitness and flying for the playoff games. Same with Anthony Scully. All of these players that have got little niggles, it's unique. Like Gary's just said, you can't take risks with these players. They're so important to the nucleus of the starting 11 or coming off the bench that you cannot take chances. So I think that the backroom staff, I'm sure Michael trusts them. You know, that he would have brought them in. He would have that rehab team, the physios, you know, the fitness coaches. All of that now was completely different when I was playing. You had a physio and that was it. It was yes or no from him. Whereas now there's so much more technology going into players and the way they're training and playing. You know, all their intensity levels are monitored. They're put on graphs. They're put on, you know, it's a completely different world to when I played. So, you know, they will have it down to an absolute 5 minutes of how much a player can play or he can't play. So, you know, if TJ's fit or Adam Jackson's going to come on, they'll know that he can only have 20 minutes. That's a safe period for him to play. So, you know, the technology and the recruitment and the knowledge of all these people now are just far beyond whatever I had as a backroom team when I was playing. So, but huge credit to them, you know, to get to this stage and have everybody fully fit almost and have a fully fit squad to pick with. And I don't envy Michael having to pick teams now. That's what it's come down to.
Just, Gary, with that in mind, what Mark's saying there with regards to injuries as well, do you actually think when we look back at that Peterborough game, as disappointing as the end was, do you think we might look back at that as a bit of a blessing in disguise? Because we are in now a position where we can sort of take stock a little bit, almost relax to an extent. We'd love to be here potentially talking about automatic places today. Of course we would. But actually, it was unlikely, wasn't it?
It was. I think hindsight will either prove or disprove that point. If we're to go up through the playoffs, you'll look back at that moment and go, brilliant, we've got 2 games to get players fit. We've got 2 games to work with the squad. We had plenty of opportunity to rest and recuperate. I think if we're to lose in the playoffs, then you'll look back at that and say, we did lose an opportunity for automatics, however slim. We all check our lottery tickets thinking we're going to win, even though the chance is 1 in however many million. So we'll always look back at that moment if we fail to go up and maybe rue it. So the only way we erase that from history is by going forward and winning. And then in that respect, yes, it's very good because we are the best equipped for the playoffs that we possibly could be.
You're a lottery player, Mark?
I am, Sam, yes. I haven't won yet, unfortunately. I'll keep trying. I'll just keep trying until I win it.
I know you mentioned today that you're not quite sure how today's game is going to go. I think we can all agree with that pretty much. Obviously, Wimbledon's safe as well, so for them it's almost a similar circumstance, isn't it? We're not playing a team that are fighting relegation.
Yeah, it's going to be a strange game for me because, like I say, I just think who wants to win it? Put it bluntly, who's got the desire to go on and win a game of football? Because it doesn't really matter to either side. If you're a player that's coming into the squad and you're trying to prove a point, you're trying to push yourself into the play starting 11, if you like, whoever that might be, whoever plays today, and they're thinking that, then of course you want to do well. You want to impress the manager. You want to say, look, I'm ready to play if you select me. But I just think it's just going to have that strange feel of a game there's nothing really on it. You're going to be playing whoever you're going to be playing in the playoffs. I don't think it particularly matters who you're going to play. And for the players, it'd be slightly strange as well because there's not a lot really to play for other than your own pride, your own professionalism. And again, it's just that intensity that we saw a little bit of lack of intensity on the Tuesday night game against Charlton, didn't we? With just that intensity, that desire, that energy just wasn't quite the same as what we've been used to. And I think that might be the case today as well. So, it's just a difficult game to call, really.
Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on Matchday Live and throughout the course of this season as well. Look forward to having you back for the playoffs as well. Take care.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Gary.
Cheers, Mark.
Lovely to get the thoughts of Mark Owen there. Gary, let's just continue the theme because we've got about a minute and a half until today's team news with Alan Long. It has been a difficult season. I mentioned before for all teams, hasn't it? There has been periods in this season where we've lost key players at key times. Which moments, when you look back, were some of the key ones that sort of stand out?
I think it'd be easy to go for somebody like George Grant, who's an obvious talisman. But for me, there's 2 players who I think, had we managed to keep them fit, or they had one spell injured, we might even be in the automatic frame. And they're Joe Walsh and Liam Bridcutt. And I think the problem there is that they have had multiple times out injured. So they've missed a spell, come back and missed a spell. That's what I think's been key. All teams have injuries through the course of the season. You understand that. It's part and parcel of the game. When you're losing key players for 1, 2, 3 periods, I think Liam and Joe were both only in 20 appearances so far over a 60-game season with cup games as well. So I think they're the 2 that are key. And again, I think whatever league we're in next season, they'll both be key players for us. And if we can keep them fit, we'll be much better for it.
About a minute to go until today's team news. Just quickly, Gary, do you expect those 2 players to start or play a part this afternoon?
100%. I think that they both need to start. I think that they need to get some match minutes under their belt because of the spells out that they've had as well. I'm of the thought that it will be a very, very strong first team today. Almost, as I say, a dress rehearsal for the playoffs. And as Mark said, it needs to be intense. I think that's what Michael Appleton will be looking for, because it's all well and good going into it, having these games as kind of rest games and recuperation games. But if you just drop that intensity, it's like if you're doing a run and you slow down, it's harder to speed up. It's better to keep the same speed. So I expect a full team, lots of intensity, and a big win for Lincoln City.
Let's see what it is. Here's Alan Long from the LNER Stadium Gantry with today's Lincoln City team news.
Yeah, hi Sam, and good morning, and welcome to the Eagle's Nest. We've finally made it up here into the, what we're calling the Gantry. I think that's what we call it. And I can tell you there are 6 changes to the Imps lineup. So in come Hopper, Walsh, McRandles, Johnson, Bridcutt and Rogers. So the full lineup: number 1, Alex Palmer. At 2 is Regan Poole. 7, Taylor Eden. 9, Tom Hopper. 10, George Grant. 16, Joe Walsh. At 18 is Conor McRandles. 20, Brennan Johnson. 22, TJ Ioma. 23, Liam Bridcutt. And 27, Morgan Rogers. On the bench, 31 is Sam Long. 4, Lewis Montsma. 5 Adam Jackson, 6 Max Sanders, 11 Anthony Scully, 15 Cohen Bramall, and 19 Callum Morton. So just do that lineup again. Alex Palmer, Regan Poole, Teo Eden, Tom Hopper, George Grant, Joe Walsh, Conor McGrandles, Brendan Johnson, TJ Aoma, Liam Bridcut, and Morgan Rogers. Well, we're going to head back downstairs to get onto terra firma. So I'll hand back to you in the box with this wonderful view of the LNER Stadium.
Yeah, glorious, isn't it? Thanks very much indeed, Al. Yeah, so Alan Long there. Michael Appleton, I should say, the Lincoln City manager, of course, making 6 changes to today's starting 11. Alex Palmer, Regan Poole, TJ Omer, Joe Walsh, Teo Eden, Liam Bridcut is in. He's the captain this afternoon. He's alongside Conor McGrandles and George Grant. It is then Morgan Rogers, Brennan Johnson, and Tom Hopper. The substitutes bench is Long, Monsma, Jackson, Sanders, Scully, Bramall, Morton. Guy Hutchinson, you said that Michael would name a strong team this afternoon. You're right, he has. What are your thoughts on it overall?
I think there's some interesting points there. I think the fact that Eden starts at left back over Bramall gives you an indication of the potential starting left back in the playoffs. I think Bramall's been really good in recent weeks as well. So I think that's an interesting call. TJ Aoma starting is massive because I don't imagine that TJ Aoma would start if he wasn't in Michael's mind as potential first choice centre back. I think that's really interesting, from almost being frozen out a few months ago to now being preferred at the centre of defence with Joe Walsh. Says an awful lot about that young man.
Is that a form thing? Because he does look like he's really coming into his own now. And I guess, I'm probably doing him a bit of a disservice there because we've been saying that for a few months now, but he does look so comfortable in that centre-back position.
He looks very comfortable in the centre-back position, and consider he's been playing on the left side, so it's not his natural side as well. So we've played him at right back when he's actually a centre-back. We've played him at left centre-back when he's actually a right-sided centre-back. So now we're getting to see TJ Aoma in his main position. I think actually it's really, really fascinating. I think it shows an interesting evolution of the squad, and Lewis Monsma will feel quite hard done by because he's been excellent as well in recent weeks. Potentially Lewis has a knock. You never know. It might purely be a precautionary thing, but I would be surprised if Joe Walsh finishes 90 minutes. So Lewis will probably come on and TJ shift across.
In terms of the midfield then, McGrandles, Bridcut, Grant, what do you make of it?
First choice. It's first choice midfield for me. I think Conor McGrandles has been outstanding since Christmas. Probably been our form player. So industrious, so hardworking, very creative, but also good in front of his own box. Obviously, Liam Bridcut is the captain, the leader. When he plays, we're a better team across the board. I think he will be looking at getting 90 minutes into him today, ready for the playoffs. And as for George Grant, we all know what George is capable of. He scores goals, he creates goals. He's what my dad would call a proper footballer. He reminds me a lot of Peter Gain, who played for us before. He just makes things happen that you didn't think were possible. So it's first choice midfield today.
Just on the Conor McGrandles theme, would you say then that he has afforded more space? He's able to be more creative, which he likes to be. He did talk about that around January, February, saying he wanted more chances, wanted more opportunities to get on the score sheet. We've seen him score a few goals since. Is he afforded that when Liam Bridcut starts?
Potentially, yes. It depends how the game's going. I think if you imagine Lincoln in a 4-3-3, so you've got the 4 defenders, Liam Bridcut, then you've got the 3 attackers, George Grant. Conor McGrandles can float between either. So when we talked about the flexibility earlier, he's the player that turns you into effectively a 4-2-1-3, so he can go and sit alongside Bridcut and offer the defence. If we need to be on the front foot, he's equally as comfortable sitting next to George Grant behind the front 3, and we're a 4-1-2-3. So I think that he'll adapt to how the game's going, but quite right, when we're attacking, if he's alongside George Grant, I think that he can be a really creative player for us.
Interesting stuff indeed, Gary. Right then, you may have noticed, if you've been keeping your eye on the Lincoln City social media, that today his programme has got a slightly more unique, slightly different design. Hopefully you can see it there. It's put together by Lincoln City fan and founder of Imps as well, Chris Ray. Delighted to say that Chris joins us now. Chris, congratulations on the commission. You must be absolutely delighted. It's a brilliant design. Well done.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see. There's a lot of hours that went into it, so it was just nice to see it in the flesh at last.
Yeah, I'm going to hold it a little bit closer to the camera there. Talk us through it then. Talk us through some of the inspiration behind the design.
Well, I had to put in, because they wanted a design which was obviously in keeping with what's happened all season. So there was those 3 images which have been on every single programme cover. But then they gave me free rein with the rest. I was a little bit scared, actually, because I wasn't 100% sure what to put on. But I think I picked Palmer and Edun because I'd say they're my outside bets for player of the season. I think they've been fantastic all year, and I wanted to put Cohen Bramall in with a bit of a nod to the future as well, and obviously the Cathedral. It was just what came to me. Every time I sat down to draw something, I just whatever sprung to mind, I tried to put in.
Chris, I know you've been on the show recently, but for those that missed that episode of Matchday Live, just remind us all about Imp Tunes and tell us about the end of season annual as well.
Yeah, so in the next month, I'm going to be releasing almost like a review of the season, but in cartoon form, so something a little bit different. Hopefully, it'll make you laugh. It might make you think a few times, but all the money that I raise from that will be going back into the club, and I'm going to try and raise about £3,000. So it just needs a good ending now. I think the next month or so it's going to go one way or the other, isn't it? But either way, it's been a fantastic season. So hopefully it'll be a nice memento to remember a very odd but a very good season.
Yeah, and hopefully with a promotion at the end of it as well, like you mentioned there. Just in terms of the playoffs, Chris, I know they're still a way off yet in terms of, well, certainly a couple of days, few weeks maybe. But overall, what are your thoughts on them? How anxious, how nervous are you about them? How excited are you about them?
I'm very excited, but I'm not nervous because I don't think there's any expectation on us this season to go up. I spoke last time. My own personal view was just let's avoid relegation and then consolidate this year and go for it next year. So I'm almost treating this as a bit of a free shot at the playoffs. Some of the teams that are in there, Sunderland, probably Portsmouth, I think there'll be a lot more expectation on them to go up than there will be from us. And if the worst was to happen and we weren't to go up this year, I'd certainly like to think we could use the experience to be stronger next year, keep the core of the team together, add to it, where we might have been lacking a little bit this season, and then have a real good go at the automatics next year. So I'm not anxious about it at all. Not like I used to be under Keith Alexander for those seasons where I almost felt like people were looking at Lincoln expecting them to go up because we'd had 2 or 3 seasons in the playoffs, and it always felt like we were the team going in with a lot of expectation. And I think you could see it on the players' shoulders a little bit when they'd failed 2 or 3 times. So I'm treating this as almost like a free shot. I don't think there's any pressure, but equally, I think we're more than a match for any of those teams in the playoffs. And I certainly wouldn't want to play Lincoln, given how we've been playing this season.
Now, Chris, I know you've immortalised our regular Matchday Live pundit, Gary Hutchinson, as well. Gary, he's done sterling work, hasn't he?
It's absolutely fantastic. I've got several Chris Ray pieces around my bar bespoke to me. He drew me a Peter Gain as well, who obviously is a legend. So I think it's a fantastic initiative by the club to feature him, and I think it's fully deserved because Chris's work does bring a lot of joy to people, and it's all about that fan engagement again. People identify with his drawings. They look forward to them after a game to see how he's interpreted a 2-1 defeat against Fleetwood, and he always seems to get it bang on.
Chris, we're talking moments of the season on today's Matchday Live. When you look back at it, whether it's on the pitch, whether it's off the pitch, which ones stick out for you overall?
I think the 2 that stand out for me, I think the FA Cup game against Forest Green Rovers, I think it was at 6-2, but we absolutely blew them away that day. And I just think it showed how much progress we'd made from those National League days, where you could almost argue that the 2 teams were on a level pegging, 4 or 5 seasons ago. But I feel that game really showed the great strides we've made just to blow them away, basically. And it was against Mark Cooper, wasn't it? So there was always that added little bonus. But more personally, I'd say the Portsmouth away game, because my uncle is a huge Portsmouth fan. And if I think back to 10 years ago, Lincoln were a conference team and Portsmouth were in the Premiership, winning the FA Cup. I think they got into Europe one year. And just to basically see that happen and to beat them on level terms, it was a nice moment. And again, showed how far we'd come.
Always good to get one over on the family as well. In terms of today's game, Chris, how do you see it going then? We mentioned before that Wimbledon have got nothing to play for now. I guess it's quite a good thing. You'd certainly be rather going up against a team in the middle of the table as opposed to challenging for relegation or challenging for promotion. So what sort of game are you expecting this afternoon?
I've absolutely no idea, because I think it could go either way, couldn't it? We could have Lincoln players, essentially playing for their place in the playoffs, so there could be that extra little edge to it. Wimbledon have got nothing to play for, so they might play with a little bit more freedom than you might expect. But there's always that worry, I think, with this sort of game, which essentially means nothing. Our players going to be trying to protect themselves, not wanting to get injured for the week after, because I certainly wouldn't blame them if they were today. So if I had to put a prediction on it, I'm going to go for a very, very dull, maybe 1-1 draw.
Great stuff. What a lovely way to finish this conversation, Chris. Just finally, where can fans follow you on social media?
Yeah, so if you search for Imps on Twitter, it should pop up. But and all the yearbook information's there as a pinned tweet as well. So you can subscribe your email address, and I'll send out the link to buy the yearbook when it goes on sale in about a month's time.
Chris, brilliant work as always, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Great to hear from Chris from Imptunes there. You mentioned you can follow him on Twitter there at Imptunes as well, and you can check out his brilliant designs at weareimps.com too. Right then, we heard from Michael Appleton earlier on in the show. He was talking all things injuries. Then this is what he had to say about today's opponents, Wimbledon.
Yeah, no, listen, Mark's done fantastic since he's gone in, and they've been on a very, very good run and had a couple of mixed results, last couple of games or so. But they've done ever so well. They've played some decent stuff, and they're playing with a little bit of freedom will make them dangerous anyway. I mean, it should be a good open attacking game. There's no reason for it not to be, because rightly or wrongly for both sides, there's no real pressures and concerns on the game. You can just go out and sort of enjoy it and try and get a decent result.
And the fact that you do have those 5 subs available, does that help tomorrow a little bit like you did with Anthony on Tuesday and you did with Brennan the Tuesday before, that if there's even a slight doubt of an injury, you can make those changes even if it's 10 minutes into a game because you've got the subs available?
Yeah, definitely. And, it'll be interesting to see if they take that beyond this season, because I think it does certainly help the squad and not only does it help managers in terms of being able to manage the players and deal with injuries a little bit easier, it sort of gives a little bit of belief to players as well that obviously if they know the manager can make 5 changes, there's always an opportunity or a belief when you're off the pitch that you might be able to get on it.
Yeah, Michael Appleton, the Lincoln City manager, of course, giving his pre-match thoughts to BBC Radio Lincolnshire's Rob Makepeace. Gary, let's talk all things playoffs then. 3 wins in 6 campaigns, as Kate Jackson, who's written a brilliant article on the Stacey West blog, rightly points out. Historically, then, it is not good in terms of the playoff campaign, but does that have any relevance whatsoever to today's proceedings?
I think only in the fact that people will talk about it and then it will get mentioned and get into the players' heads. And it's inevitable that people will talk about us failing in 6 successive playoffs. When you think 2 of those wins came in our first 2 playoff games. So actually in 12 playoff matches, we've won 1 game. And that was a tough home win, I think, against Macclesfield. So for fans, it holds some relevance. For the players, it shouldn't, because our last playoff was under Danny Cowley, different side. Bulk of those defeats came when we were Keith Alexander and John Schofield, and very, very different sides as well. But unfortunately, it will get played upon and it will get mentioned, especially if we were to play Blackpool, who I think have got the best record in the playoffs. So people are always looking for a narrative, you, I, the media, all that sort of thing. The players have just got to focus on these are 2 games, not unlike the previous 46, but completely unlike anything that came before that.
I thought Chris, who we just spoke to there, raised a really good point as well, that during the Keithy years, if you like, there was a bit more of an expectancy to go up. There was almost a bit more pressure, wasn't there? And with that, it's everything that comes from the fans in the stands to everything to watching on Sky as well. It does feel like there's a bit of, despite the fact that we've played some of the best football in League One this season, it seems like there's a little bit less pressure to go up this year.
100%. The only time I can remember there being very little pressure on us to go up was 2002-03, and that's when we won 2 games and got to the Millennium Stadium. So I think pressure certainly does play a big part. I think we've got a young team who were not expected, as you said, to be there, so they're going to play with a degree of freedom, one hopes. And we've got loan players who have proven that they are committed to the club, but again, at the same time, they're not feeling that weight of expectation. Very few players are thinking if we don't go up, I might not get a contract, because we've got most players in contract. So I think we can go into them just playing the same game we have over 46, because with a full team, maintain that we're as good as any team in this division on our day. I'm not saying that we'll beat everybody all the time, but I'm saying that when we play our football, there's not a team in this division who I think are streets ahead of us. And if we'd kept our players fit, we'd be in the automatic promotion spot. So all those players need to do is go out, do the same again, and I think we'll be all right.
Good stuff indeed, Gary. Right then, we heard from Michael Appleton a couple of times so far on the show. Then let's now hear from the Lincoln City club captain, Liam Bridcut. This is what he had to say in his pre-match press conference.
When we're firing and we're doing the right things and the concentration is there, there's not many teams in this league that can live with us. We've shown that against the top 2 teams who have been promoted. They absolutely hated playing us, and that's come from their own players. They just don't. No one enjoys and no one wants to play us.
I imagine in a few years you'll look back on this season and think, did that really all happen? You've had so much to deal with, obviously the success on the pitch, but all the other stuff that's been going on this year. Just sum up how tough this season has been and how sort of surreal it's been for everyone.
Yeah, it's one that you'll never forget. For me, to be, like I said, we're ahead of schedule in terms of where we wanted to be as a group and as a football team. So we've kind of ticked that box and we've gone above and beyond. And I think to say we've done it in a year as crazy as what it has been in terms of the situation of the pandemic and how many games we've had to cram in such a small space of time. To say if we really do push on and do what we need to do, it'll be incredible. It'll be some achievement in terms of just everything we've had to deal with over the last 12 months. So it'll be an added bonus for us.
Yeah, the pre-match thoughts of the Lincoln City club captain Liam Bridcutt there. Gary, you spoke to Liam last week. He gave you a couple of exclusives as well. Tell us about the chat he had.
Yeah, I interviewed him for today's programme, so I'm on the cover underneath Chris Ray's designs. Liam's a very professional man. A lot of what he said there, he kind of said to me, but also I know there was some ambiguity around his contract, not from the club at all, but when we signed him, I don't think the length of contract was announced, and the website Transfer Market, which is often a little bit off the mark anyway, said he was out of contract this summer. He's at the club next season. He said that's definite. He's enjoying his football. He loves being here. There's no reason to go anywhere else. And I think that just put my mind at rest, if not anybody else's.
It doesn't come as a surprise to hear a player say that now, does it? You know, players have been saying that for at least 3 or 4 years now, haven't they? They enjoy A, being in the city, B, playing for this team, playing for the fan base when they're in as well. We're almost getting used to it, but we should be reminded that it's great to hear players say that, because they don't say that at every football club.
No, they don't. And for many, many years, we've always looked at our star players and thought, at what point is that player going to leave the club? And I seem to remember Peter Gain, Richard Butcher, Gary Taylor-Fletcher, Simon Yeo, Paul Morgan. Every year, you know, they enjoy being at the club, but can the club match their ambition? And I think this club now, the way that we are, can match the ambition. The city can, because it's more vibrant than it was 20 years ago. There's more happening. It's a better area. I think generally to live, the quality of life has gone up. So everything around the club, from the training ground to the actual ground to the staff, is set up for progression, and players like that, that's what they want to do.
A little bit of darkness has descended on Gary Hutchinson there. Hopefully we'll get him lit back up. But in the meantime, let's see what happens when the two sides, Lincoln City and Wimbledon, met back in January. This is the best of the action. Yeah, some performance, wasn't it? We've got the Wimbledon team lineup to bring you as well. This is it in full, I believe, and I'll ask Gary Hutchinson for his thoughts on it as well. Zanev, the goalkeeper, O'Neill, Woodyard, the captain, Nightingale, Alexander, Palmer, Redoni, Asal, Dobson, Callum By, and Joe Pigott as well. Gary, when you look at those, I know Joe Pigott's in particular a player that you really like and really rate.
Yeah, I like Joe Pigott at this level. I think he came from Maidstone originally after tearing it up in the National League. Yeah, he's a player I rate a great amount. He's a good goal threat. He was injured for a portion of this season. I think had he not been injured, I think Wimbledon would have been safer long before they were as well. And also I've got to mention Alex Woodyard, their captain. He played for us in both our final playoff games before he left our last playoff games. He's a player I rate. I think he's very industrious at this level.
Judging by that graphic, he's playing at centre-back as well. Is that can we read anything into that? Or is that a Danny Cowley sort of put the players wherever so that the opposition can't see where they're playing?
I certainly hope so. Otherwise, Ollie Palmer's playing defensive midfield. And I know
Very good point.
He hasn't got the work rate for that. So, no, I think he'll play in the midfield. You know, he's very much a kind of a Liam Bridcup figure for us. So I imagine him to be mopping up and looking to maybe stop George Grant.
I say it every week, but that's why he's the pundit and I'm the host, because he knows a lot more than I do. Someone else that knows a lot more than I do is Ben Natman from the third tier. Now, you'll notice, fans of Lincoln City, that Ben's rocking his Fleetwood top, but he's a League One expert. If you're only just joining us at this stage in the season, A, where have you been? But B, delighted to see Ben. Some big games this afternoon in League One in terms of the playoffs. How do you see them going, Ben?
It's huge, isn't it? And, you look at Portsmouth, Oxford and Charlton, have a chance to get in. And about all three of those sides have had awful runs. Oxford came at the start of the year. Portsmouth came just after Christmas under Jacket when they let him go after the cup final exit, and obviously lost 4-1 against Northampton. And look at Charlton, they went, I think, one winning 11 under Bowyer, brought Atkins in, and they've changed the approach. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets in. I do believe Portsmouth will just pick 6th. I don't think anyone who finishes in that. I think it's honestly either Blackpool's or Lincoln's to win this year. I really do believe that. I think Portsmouth, Oxford and Charlton, I think defensively, I worry about them. Oxford do score a lot of goals, but again, concede a lot as well. But Lincoln and Blackpool, they're very sound at the back. They score goals. They've got good players, and I think that could be a playoff final.
Hopefully you can hear us okay as well. You may have noticed that the pre-match atmosphere, the pre-match music is building here at the LNEL Stadium. Of course, we wish you were here as well. We wish you were here as well, Ben. Why not? You mentioned the Blackpool there. They're really coming into form, aren't they? They went on a brilliant run of form, 16 games unbeaten, then lost a couple of games. They're now 3 games unbeaten, having not conceded as well. How concerned from a Lincoln City perspective would you be?
I wouldn't be if I was. I'd just concentrate on yourselves, because I think the main thing is that you start the season really well. That Wimbledon game that you've just shown was the first time I think I tweeted after the game. I think this Lincoln side of the real deal to get results, in scrappy games. And Grant's come back in, and I did a video the other day. He's in my team of the season. You're a better side when he's in, and it's as simple as that. I just think, look at the players that we've got. Look how well we've done. Look at the manager that we've got. And on any of your days, you can beat them. You've beaten Blackpool this season at home and due to them. You do to them at home and beat them away. So I don't see why you can't do it again. I just concentrate on yourselves and let the players take care of it, because I wouldn't match anyone against Lincoln. I think they're a superb side, and I think Blackpool will be disappointed that maybe he's not creeped into the top 2, if I'm honest with you, where I know they'd like to get into the top 6, where Lincoln are buzzing to be back in that top 6, because it looked for a while they weren't going to get in.
Loving your use of the term "we" as well. You're an honorary imp, Ben. Gary, I'm just going to ask you about Sunderland. Ben mentioned Sunderland there, and they're expected to have 10,000 at the Stadium of Light as well. For that reason alone, should they be a worry? We know they've got injury problems, but Lee Johnson has come out in the media this week and said, that is a huge advantage. And I guess having 10,000 as opposed to your 2,500, naturally it is.
It is a huge advantage. Personally, from the outside looking in, I mean, Ben's on the outside looking in, and he can be a lot more optimistic about our team. I worry about everybody in the playoffs because I'm on the inside looking out. It's natural. I'm a pessimist. Sunderland have got some really good players. They're a team that are in transition almost certainly. And we look at the likes of McGeady and White, who obviously on their day can do very well. I think we marshalled them well at their place. So I think that it's probably they're one of the teams I wouldn't mind playing, especially with their injury crisis. But those 10,000 fans could make a difference. difference, especially if you're away in the second leg at Sunderland. And I think that's almost certainly going to be the case. I think Sunderland will finish above us. If we did play them, we'd be away. If you go there needing to get a result and there's 10,000 partisan home fans on your back, it becomes a very, very big challenge.
If we bring the League One table back in, I know we saw it earlier, but if we just have another look at it, and Ben, you mentioned Portsmouth there. You think that they'll finish within the playoffs. You don't see too much of a hope for Oxford and Charlton. Certainly, Charlton need to win this afternoon. If Oxford draw and Portsmouth lose, that would be enough for them in terms of goal difference, wouldn't it?
It would. And Charlton, I don't know why, I just got a funny feeling that they'll win today, just with Hull. You've seen their celebrations, obviously, at Lincoln, and you saw the celebrations last week against Wigan, I think it was, when they won the league. So they might be off it. I think Peterborough will be the same again against Doncaster. So I wouldn't tip them to win today. I think Charlton would fancy a victory, but I think Portsmouth will just about have enough to get in, and the 75-point mark will stead them in good shape, but they've got to do the job, and it's Portsmouth don't need to worry about other results. They just need to win their game, and they know they're in.
Ben, you obviously cover the League One as a whole. In terms of yesterday, we found out, didn't we, that there's a couple more teams joining the rest of the pack with regards to both Rotherham and Sheffield Wednesday, who were promoted. Derby, of course, staying up as well. How do you foresee League One next season? Of course, from a Lincoln perspective, we hope we're not here, but it's going to be another tough one, isn't it?
It's always tough, and you've got to think about it with, there's going to be at least one of Portsmouth, Sunderland, Blackpool in League One next season, if not two of them. So it's going to be a really tough ask to get out of it again. It's going to be a competitive league with Wednesday, and Bolton are a big club, which will go again, and Wigan might have a bit more spending power. And so it's going to be a difficult one. And I think if you're a Lincoln fan, you'd be hoping that this is the year that you can get out, because I think this is where teams are a bit more vulnerable and weaker than maybe usual.
But if we don't get out, then next season, how about a 1-2 between Lincoln and Fleetwood, Ben? We'd take that, wouldn't we?
Aye, absolutely. It'd be nice to play you again, but cause especially after we played you at Sincil Bank early in the year, we played you off the park, I believe, that day.
You're normally popular with the Lincoln fans, Ben. Maybe not after today, but listen, Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on numerous amounts of Matchday Live this season. Thanks very much for your insight.
Thank you as ever, Sam.
Great to hear the thoughts of Ben Knappman there, despite what he said at the end regarding playing off the park there.
Oh, he's blotted his copybook there, hasn't he? I've been on the third tier and I didn't mention Fleetwood at all, so I feel quite stuck. No, it's great to have him on. It's nice to get that wider knowledge. And he raises some really interesting points. I actually think Oxford will steal the last playoff place, but it's anybody's. It'll be an exciting day for those three clubs.
Let's just run you through, with about 3 minutes left of today's show, Lincoln City's starting 11 this afternoon. If you're only just joining us, Michael Appleton making 6 changes to the side that lost to Charlton in the midweek. Alex Palmer, Regan Poole, TJ Omer, Joe Walsh, Teo Eden, Liam Bridcutt, the captain, Conor McGrandles, George Grant, Morgan Rogers, Brennan Johnson and Tom Hopper, Long, Monsma, Jackson, Sanders, Scully, Bramall, Morton. Let's look at that front three then, Gary. For you, is it the strongest front three that Michael could put out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is. I think when you've got the pace of Rogers and Johnson out wide, you've always got a threat. They interact very well. They run the channels, and so they're comfortable coming inside as much as going outside. I think we've seen how much we've missed Tom Hopper. No disrespect to Callum Morton, but he's not the number 9 that Tom Hopper is. Callum's probably better in a 2. He's better playing sort of with his face to goal, looking for balls to run onto. So I fully expect that to be the forward 3 that would start any playoff games. I think the goal threat there are Rogers and Johnson. I think that Tom Hopper creates the space and time for them with his hard work.
The running theme on today's Matchday Live is no one seems to have a clue what's going to happen in today's game. So without further ado, I will ask Gary Hutchinson for his final League One score prediction of the season, in which he has been, all credit where it's due, very, very good in his predictions this season. I'm not just saying that as well.
Well, let's hope home today, because I've got a really good feeling about today. I think Lincoln City are going to win 3-0.
We'd take it, wouldn't we? I'll go along with that as well. I'll jump on the bandwagon. Why not? Gary, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been even more of a pleasure being able to do the show from the LNER Stadium with you this afternoon as well. The thoughts of Gary Hutchinson there. Thanks very much to everyone that's joined us on Matchday Live so far this League One season as well. Not least Ben Knappman, who we saw, Chris Ray from Imptunes, and of course Mark Hone, the BBC Radio Lincolnshire summariser, of course former Imp as well. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back for the playoffs, of course we will, and I'll be back on Friday for the Lincoln City end of season player awards. That's Friday at 7 o'clock on the club's YouTube channel. Do enjoy today's game. Bye for now.